A black male Wall Street journalist gets arrested for interviewing or reporting. He's actually doing the background for his story. He gets locked up at the bank right outside of it. Here's a video.
I heard him say he was gonna leave. This is ridiculous. He's a reporter, and I heard him say he was gonna leave.
Yeah, I told you, I didn't realize I was on the bus.
He's also doing literally nothing, like nothing wrong. No, he said he was gonna leave. You did not need to cuff him. You absolutely did not need to cuff him. Hey, what's your name so I can send this to you?
Dion Rabouin.
Dion Rabouin? Okay. Can I find you? Okay. This is ridiculous. This is the most obscene thing I think I've ever seen.
Dion Rabouin was locked up for doing absolutely nothing illegal. Here's the second video.
As I said to you,
I'm fine where I am. I'm not doing anything wrong.
You want to get arrested as well?
You know, Mike.
What did you just see? You just saw an individual exercising his freedom of speech. You literally have that codified in the US Constitution. He told the officer, was a journalist, conducting background for his story. That's routine. It's called man on the street type stuff. Well, the bank, they got suspicious. And the officers, well, they decided to go ahead and arrest him. Even though he identified himself, it was credible what he said. They didn't care. Big ups to the ally who decided to not only record, but voice an advocacy for this journalist. Let's put his picture up full mass. All right, there he is. Dion Rabouin, a Wall Street Journal reporter, was arrested while conducting interviews outside of Chase Bank in Phoenix, Arizona. A reporter for the Wall Street Journal is in a position he is not accustomed to. He is now the subject of a controversial headline after a video of a confrontation with a cop from the Phoenix Police Department started to circulate online. Normally, he is writing the news, not making it. The outlet is speaking out on behalf of its employee, big ups to them for doing so, demanding that the police department not only review the incident, but create a system or policy to ensure journalist rights are protected after the incident on Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022. That's when it happened with him and one of the department's officers. You know, it's interesting. It's very interesting when something like this happens, there's silence, obviously, from the right. Conservatives will say nothing about what you just saw, even though they claim they are all about freedom of speech. They are all about protecting their freedom of speech. But literally, when the government actually does violate the US Constitution by abridging, limiting, or punishing you for this freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, etc., they say nothing. Absolutely nothing. So let me get this right. If you say the N-word on social media and somebody says, that's bad and you need to go, that is a violation of your speech, according to Republicans. But if you are conducting background for an upcoming interview, and you've done nothing illegal, you get arrested, well, that's acceptable. Let me give you the background to the story. The reporter who covers markets for the Wall Street Journal told local station ABC 15 he was conducting background research. This is common on the sidewalk outside a local Chase Bank branch. This was around 2:40 p.m. Asking various customers about financial services. The reporter says he was unaware the sidewalk he was standing on was private property. Now let me say this about the legality of that part. He's on the sidewalk. He thinks it is fair play. He can be asked to leave. there was no malicious intent. No malicious intent means there's a trespass, but there's no criminal trespass. Criminal trespass requires intent to trespass. He had no intent to trespass, okay? Number one. Number two, it is understandable why he would post outside of a bank if the story is about financial services of that bank. And number three, this makes me question, what was he going to report on that had the bank so afraid? There's more. Things really escalated quickly, he said. The police say the Chase workers reached out to them because customers were complaining that a man was approaching people as they entered the bank, asking them personal questions. The interaction between the officer and the man who was the subject of the complaint took place on private property, all right? So is that illegal? Is it illegal for somebody to ask you a question in the United States of America? No. Remember, when you call a cop, you are calling a gun. You're saying, in order to handle this situation, right here, a black man asking me a question, somebody needs to show up with a gun right now. How insane is that? But that is the reality of what they've done. There's more. 2 bank employees came outside and asked him, what was he doing? And he explained he was conducting man on the street style interviews with people regarding their savings accounts. Without incident or asking them to leave, the bankers went back inside. They never said leave. According to the reporter, similar to the bank employees, the officer asked him, hey, what are you doing? He said, I identified myself. I said, I am Dion Rabouin. I'm a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. I'm working on a story. I told the people in the branch what was going on. And he said, well, you can't do that. So the officer that you saw in that video, we've identified him. His name is Caleb Zimmerman. Not making this up. Caleb Zimmerman is his name, was the responding officer and contradicted the account of the reporter. In his official report, I'm talking about the cop, he said the journalist refused to leave the property and originally refused to identify himself. Now let me highlight why the cop lied in the report. Those two things, he refused to leave. Well, now that makes it criminal trespass, okay? It's not negligent anymore, it's criminal. So he's building a case, a criminal case against him in order to justify the interaction. And then he says, well, he did not identify himself. Once again, another dynamic to bolster the cop's claim. But according to the witness and the journalist, none of that is true. There's more. All right, ABC 15 was first to report that Journal editor-in-chief, Matt Murray, sent a letter to the Phoenix Police Chief, Michael Sullivan, stating she was appalled by the incident she saw. I am appalled and concerned that officers at your department would attempt to interfere with Mr. Rabouin's constitutional right to engage in journalism and purport to limit anyone's presence in a public location, Murray wrote. The Phoenix Police Department received a letter from the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal expressing concerns about an interaction with one of our professional standard bureau with one of their reporters and a Phoenix police officer. This letter was shared with our professional standard bureau for review, and they're conducting an administrative investigation, a representative said in a statement. So in a statement, a Wall Street Journal representative said this: Rabouin was detained, handcuffed, and placed in the back of a police vehicle while reporting. No journalist should ever be detained simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. Let me provide some more context. This is a reporter. He's not an activist. He's not trying to create some kind of point. He's just doing his job. He identified himself every time it was requested. So why are we here? We're here because he did not look as if he deserved rights according to the officer. Because if he was afforded the same rights that the officer swore to uphold, to protect, none of this would have went down. So you have this devaluing of human life where you're willing to turn a man's world upside down for doing nothing illegal at all. We will continue to follow. Jackson, thoughts here?
So I think stories like this really highlight how in situations where people may call the police, the outcome is simply how the officer or officers felt like handling the situation. Because with any type of real in-depth questioning or just quick glance at the situation, they could have seen like, okay, he's a reporter. Who's he a reporter for? And as you pointed out, he's not an activist. And not only that, it's not like he's a reporter for Vox or the Huffington Post or TYT to where, that would set people's hair on fire if they are, to the right. He's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, which is a very, old, prestigious and pretty conservative, not like far right or anything, but just to have, kind of right-wing economic takes and in shades on their stories. So the bottom line is that, he was just a guy who looked like he could damage the property value and more importantly, the property's prestige because, they just took him to the car. Probably, if he would have just asked a few questions, it wouldn't have mattered. And to think too, how many times have, people in this audience perhaps ran into a cop that was cool and they let you off? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe you was younger, or maybe he was like, man, I don't really care about this. Just go. Or they're like, you know what I'm saying? So again, that's even though you maybe were doing something wrong, and I bring that up just to say, police can do that.
That's right.
But often they just don't do it because they feel like screwing with people. And it's as simple as that.
Great context.